minute.
Ladies, gentlemen, and haradrim of all ages, you've heard me say it a surprising number of times before, and I'm about to say it again. It's been a pretty eventful few days surrounding Diablo 4, so let's talk about everything that's going on. Info from the devs themselves, and anything else happening with Diablo 4 at the moment. First up, we actually have pretty freshly released patch notes for 1.1.4, which is hitting servers next Tuesday at the normal patch time, at least presumably. Like the last couple of patches of the game, this one is actually entirely good things, nothing bad in it at all, but it's too small, it's too late, and it refreshes a feeling that I'm really not a fan of. The main change here then is boosting the Urn of Aggression bonus, which is the seasonal blessing that you can do to increase your XP gain from monster kills, and now at maximum ranks it will be a 20% experience increase instead of the 8% maximum that it was before, which is actually a pretty sizable experience gain increase. It's lovely, it's fantastic for anyone that is still playing the game, but this, again, this gain is something that I look at and I think, yeah, it's good that they have done that, but that should have sort of been how it was at the day one of the season. 8% was such a small boost to something that simply feels better to be faster, especially in a seasonal setting. And once again, it's something that I look at and say, that is fantastic for Season 2 and beyond that. So basically Season 1, I guess, was just the testing grounds for future seasons. And we were all just playtesting their concepts for them to prepare for future seasons that they care about more. Aside from that though, this is entirely just bug fixes to quests. Again, as a whole, this patch is a good thing. I love what it is and as a concept, but it's too small and it's too late to make people play the game who have already stopped playing, but still worth noting its existence, and that it is of course good for anyone that is still playing. Secondly then, and this is going to be the majority of today's discussion, let's be real, we have a new interview between Rod Ferguson, the GM of all things Diablo, and a writer for Dexerto. And during this interview, Rod drops the absolute bomb that they have planned annual expansions, and this is sort of massive for a few reasons that we'll need to go over. But first, we of course have the grain of salt that simply releasing an expansion as an action doesn't fix the game by itself. It is what is in the expansion that will matter, and giving us vague concepts of, hey, there's a paid piece of content happening this often in a game that many players have lost trust in doesn't really make us excited or hype at this exact moment. At least personally, it just makes me want to keep paying attention and see how it turns out before I make any decisions. Even as I have mostly just stopped playing the game for the last week or two, I'm still keeping tabs on stuff like this because I want Diablo 4 to be good, of course. So if there is any talk about future major updates, I'll of course keep my ear to the ground because I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going to happen, what's changing, and when. I imagine I'm not the only one that wants to do that either. So, you know, annual expansions, yeah? I'll show the interview in a more of a longer form so you can see the full context, but it is pretty self-explanatory. The initial question was simply, how far into the future will Diablo 4 be supported, updated, and expanded upon? How long do they see the game living, essentially? And Rod compared it to the length of a piece of string. Essentially, we'll see as we go really and cut it where we feel like it. But the plan is, quote-unquote, years and years. To them, the game at launch and Season 1 itself too were just the building blocks to make the game up from, the foundation, which for all intents and purposes sort of confirms the biggest complaint the community has had for ages, which is that it feels like we just all paid to beta test the game. If they are counting this as just the building blocks, just the foundation, and saying that it won't really be complete for years of content being added to come, what does that say about us and what they've asked us to do? Yes, live service as a concept is a thing that exists in many genres and games, and it works if you do the best that you can to provide quality content at every moment. If you treat launch like it's a scoop of vanilla ice cream with the plans to turn it into a banana split in a couple of years, of course the player base is going to be annoyed with that. It isn't, oh, we messed up, we'll fix it. It's, no, this is actually what we planned to do, really, but apparently you don't like it for some reason that we never could have predicted, which is silly to me to actually confirm this to be the case. But in any case, it is at this point that Rod says for this building on the game, they look at their quarterly seasons, which we already know about, of course, one season every 4 months for a year, then they look at their annual expansions. Now that is a brand new piece of information right there. In an interview that happened before the game had even actually launched with Kinda Funny Games, Rod specifically mentioned that there was already a team working on the first expansion for the game, and that they were starting soon to build the second expansion as well. That in itself was really big, as it confirmed that we were getting 2 expansions minimum to this game. Combine that though with the idea of annual expansions, and finally we start to get a bigger picture. A lot of people would argue that Diablo 3 wasn't a good game before the release of its expansion, Reaper of Souls, but it was only ever expected to have that one expansion, and it's the only one that it got. Then seasons started after that happened, and it really revitalized the whole thing, adding new classes and everything too, which is really big. What I would expect from annual expansions to Diablo 4 is probably just 1 new class per expansion. 2 a year definitely seems like a bit much to me, so 1 new class per year at most. Continuation of the main story campaign, of course, maybe changes to the level cap, raising it a bit, and almost definitely additional world tiers with further difficulty options to play on as a result. The thing is, when Diablo 3 got Reaper of Souls, they knew it was the only really properly major update that they were going to be able to give the game, so they gave it their all to make it absolutely perfect at that point. My biggest concern about Diablo 4 and its expansions is that feeling there is just non-existent. If they actively plan to release expansions every year and Expansion 2 is underway long before Expansion 1 is even finished, then how will they ever build off of player feedback? How will they ever change the game to be what we want it to be if they have to recode 4 different versions of it because they are working 2 seasons ahead and 2 expansions ahead? This is why it has taken months to even have elemental resistances fixed, which still won't even happen for another 2 months or so even from now. It's because they have worked so far ahead that making changes is a massive undertaking for them, when it could have been so much smaller. Then on top of that, it means they always know that there is another chance, there is another update, another opportunity to add something in, and maybe even gain back the trust of players. Reaper of Souls of Diablo 3 had a sense of urgency, because it was the only really major update. If each Diablo 4 expansion is released while the next expansion is already well underway on development, it means that they will be delaying, releasing things they've already worked out, things that might even make us just enjoy the game more. And I hate that feeling. There is no sense of urgency from the developers with Diablo 4, and that has probably been my main problem with it since release. The developers have committed to changes, and they keep talking about how they will happen, but the game has been out for more than 3 months now, and all we have are vague promises of Season 2 or Season 3, even for some changes that have been confirmed, and it confuses me so much. Yes, we have got some of the changes that we've asked for, but a lot of them have been in really small ways, just the easiest way they could possibly apply it, not in a way that actually fully fixes the problem, such as stash base. We got an extra stash page, which is cool, but we still have inventory problems. It feels like they've cornered themselves with their own business model here. They clearly had an idea to always be working really far ahead so that they can keep up the live service model and keep up a really nice, reasonable pace, make some money every year, keep working on the game, and never feel overly pressured or time-gated, and that does make sense, right? Well, at least it would if the game on release itself was perfect, because instead now they have to make changes on like 5 times as many builds of the game, making sure that it functions correctly in every single one of them before going through with it. Some things they aren't even bothering to change until future builds that they have already been working on because they just think it is simpler. That's the whole thing with the elemental resistances, with leaderboards as a concept. All of this, all of it hurts players. It hurts the consumers, the people that are actually, supposed to enjoy the game. So while the concept of annual expansion sounds cool, if we go simply off of how big of a deal Reaper of Souls was for Diablo 3, I don't have anywhere close to those kinds of expectations for Diablo 4 expansions until I see cold, hard footage of gameplay. And that's coming from someone who has given the game the benefit of the doubt far too many times, honestly. Past that, we only have one tweet from the devs the last few days, as they seem to have been keeping quite busy, which is from Adam Fletcher, the Global Community Development Director for the Diablo franchise. Someone messages him complaining about uber unique drop rates, how they are essentially non-existent items for 99% of players because if it won't drop, it might as well not exist, and that is a fairly agreeable statement. Adam simply restates here that uber uniques are going to be reevaluated in Season 2, mostly referring to the fact that there will be, in theory, target farming possibilities for uniques and uber uniques related to the 5 new endgame bosses that will be added within that season. That's pretty much it then. It's really been a quiet week outside of these new patch notes for 1.1.4 and that interview. Honestly, it makes me even wonder a bit if it was actually a stumble from Rod mentioning that there will be annual expansions. Maybe we weren't supposed to know that, and as a result, they're just staying as quiet as possible for a couple of days to let people digest that. After all, annual expansions are a big deal no matter what side of the aisle you're on. You either hate it because it sounds like a way to provide less content for more money, or you love it because it means more frequent additions of things to do in the game. And hell, you could even be like me and really like the part where there's going to be more to do more often, but at the same time, absolutely hate the idea of asking me to pay what will likely be close to the price of the game itself on launch once per year, unless the actual content added to the game within these is substantial. And I mean, it's got to be a really chunky update, or else what's the point other than just trying to take more money from people? And that's all there really is to say about it. I am extremely hesitant to be even remotely excited about annual expansions for the game, based on what we've seen so far from the developers as far as updates and info goes. But I will reserve my final judgment until I can see actual examples of changes within the game, what is actually going to happen, when it's going to be. Words won't do it. Not until I see actual gameplay and in-game interaction showing all of this stuff off will I believe that it can be worthwhile. Until then, here I stand, simply keeping an eye on any happenings to see if there is anything announced that could give me even a modicum of hope for the future of this game. And let's just say, nothing has made me want to just jump immediately back in, but there's enough talk about the future that I'll at least keep my eye on it for now, waiting to see how each of these things things properly plays out. And that's it for today then, everyone. There wasn't a large quantity of news for Diablo 4 these past few days, but the biggest bit of news, the biggest individual piece, is just absolutely massive. Again, whether it is big in a good way or a bad way depends on your own personal opinions, but I think I've made my own position quite clear. There's a lot that irks me about the situation, and I think the idea of annual expansions maybe even aggravates the issues that I have, but I'll reserve full judgment until I can see what's under the hood and find out what's going properly. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown then, and of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments below as always too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.